Today we're going to talk about cash management. And you know that if I don't have cash in my purse, I can't buy anything. So when you look at the budget that you present every year, it's unfunded. It means that you still need to accumulate cash to make payments. So that's why I always refer cash as king. So I think for this presentation, remember that cash is king. If you manage to do cash management right, many things will fall in place. But if you don't do cash management, active cash management, guess what? Your debt will accumulate because of arrears. So let me, I think tonight when we have a supper or dinner, we're going to write a song about this, cash is king. And I want, even when I go to my grave, I will still emphasize that cash is king. Let me tell you why. This is just the content that I'm going to talk about. All the tools, the challenges, the structures. The objective is to ensure that cash is available during a financial year to fulfill all government's commitments. Learning outcomes, again, government cash balance to ensure optimum value. Cash has a value. It got, and then, so during this workshop, we hear many reasons why debt is high. We talk about high borrowing costs, the budget, the mobilization, resource mobilization constraints, high borrowing costs, down credit rating downgrades. But there's two other elements. If you don't do cash management well, this will also add to your debt. And that is arrears. And yeah, so this is the objective. So if you don't do other cash management the way it should be, active cash management, guess what will happen? Your arrears will accumulate, and there's no separation of monetary and fiscal policies. So there's two elements that I'm sure we can do something about it. So so I know that you often, or you already know what is cash rationing. Cash rationing leads to the accumulation of arrears, while active cash management limits the accumulation of arrears. So in many countries, when government makes payment, the central banks needs to, they put liquidity in the market, and the central banks need to drain that liquidity. And they use government instruments to drain that liquidity. So it's to say that in many countries, the central bank monetary policies is increase government outstanding debt. Now, and so the monetary policies and the arrears is things that we can do something about. So what I'm saying here again, cash has real value, and it brings significant efficiencies to government's scarce resources if managed well. COVID-19 and all the natural disasters that we emphasize has shown that governments need cash. If you don't have the cash, you can't deal with these shocks, or you don't have enough funding for these shocks. So there's always a misconception. What is cash management? Cash management is not budget execution. It's not divide by 12 and this is how much I'm going to spend for the rest of the year. It's not budget execution. Budget execution is a function of the budget, and they need to make sure that departments of MDAs stays within their budget. But ultimately, cash management is the function to define and making the right amount of money available in the right currency at the right time, at the right place, to meet government's obligation in the most cost-effective way. The function is always concerned with optimizing the value or actively manage cash. So, what are the tools that we require? We need to know how much the MDA's salaries, debt service costs will be for the year in a 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months period. When are you going to spend this money? It's too, so your expenditure forecasting is one of the tools that we need for cash management. Even your revenue projections, similar periods, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. When is the money coming in? Interest and redemption loans, when I'm going to pay debt service costs and redeem bonds, also throughout the year. Obviously, there needs to be, you can plot that on an Excel spreadsheet as a beginning, very simple. It's a very simple process. Coordination and collaboration, of course, you need the budget office, ministries, MDAs, revenue authorities, debt officers to work closely together to get these numbers. So accurate data will help you to predict my spending and my revenue patterns and my commitments in terms of debt over the years. And then I will see where's the gaps. So this is cash management. It's very easy. So it's not a complicated exercise, but so let me tell you what happened from 2010 in African countries. What is the real issue? Why is it's complex? Is that since 2010, countries started to modernize their cash management systems. We saw a lot of debt officers, cash management, and units that was implemented at the Ministry of Finance. So there was a lot of reforms in terms of cash management. But the reforms riddle with complexity. Why? Too many bank accounts. I mean, excuse me for mentioning this for Zambia. I know the Zambia situation very well. Over 2,000 accounts. Other countries, 3,000 accounts. How can you manage government cash if you have so many accounts? Cash plans, what happened to cash plans is that the MDAs don't trust the Ministry of Finance, so they front load their cash plans. They think that they're not going to get the money, so they're front loading the cash plans, which is skew. They're not going to spend that money. So the information sharing between cash flows and revenue projections, between cash management, is incomplete, inaccurate, undermine the accuracy of cash flow projections. So making timely payments becomes an enormous challenge in most countries, which tends to resort to cash rationing. So what is it that you need for cash management? Of course, you need an office, a director or someone that can, the head of that office that can manage cash. Treasury single account reduces all those accounts. Some of the accounts are not open with the necessary authority because you need to get authority for the accountant general to open an account. Making it reliable, so the projections was, you need to do projections of cash flows and cash inflows. Short-term financing facilities. So yesterday we heard about bridging loans, but I will tell you what other very straightforward bridging financing tools you can use. So, of course, you need to work closely with the banks, payments and settlement, idle cash. This is a big problem. So monies are lying in these accounts. And then you borrow. Government's got, the money is not spent, it's lying idle in that accounts. And then you borrow while you have cash. So one needs to sort of deal with idle cash. There should not be idle cash in the system. You should only receive the money when you only in time to make a payment, not ahead. So the most important question that the Minister of Finance always asked me when I was still at the National Treasury, it's the only question. I mean, it's questions that CEOs of corporates, and it's a question that my wife also asked me, do we have cash? That is the most, the CEO or the Director General or the Minister of a department or the MDA is not interested in anything else. He just wants to know, do we have cash? So the critical, so reforming critical requirement for government, public finance and debt management reform agenda is cash management. It's the first, when we start to capacitate and implementing reforms in South Africa from 1994, when a new democratic elected government came into power, it's the first thing that we did, cash management. And I will tell you why. So if we look at Mauritius, there on the left-hand side is the MDAs, the Ministry of Finance, and the Bank of Mauritius. So at the DMA, you have the line ministries, self-accounting ministries, Mauritius Revenue Services. Minister of Finance, Accountant General, Debt Management Unit, Budget, Fiscal section. In the bank, you have its government's banker, act as a front office for the debt management office and maintain the TSA. And then you see there's various committees that helps to communicate and coordinate and collaborate, whatever, mainly in terms of cash. So the Mauritius experience, they have a very sound legal framework. You can't do effective debt management if you don't have a strong budgetary process. When your budget keeps on adjusting or you have off-budget spending, cash management becomes very important, but you don't know when are these going to flow. So credible budgets support cash management. And also, they did wider coordination between Treasury and the line ministries. Very important that you interact with these line ministry on a regular basis, and of course, technological architecture in terms of IT systems and accounting systems helps very much. Cash management challenges in Ghana. Let me go to that's the Mauritius experience. Let's have the Ghana experience. So we heard during this session, this few days, that Ghana is making a lot of progress. But what we see here is that there's a lack of clarity regarding the scope of treasury control accounts. So the number of accounts in the treasury single account remains unidentified and unreconciled. So and then even with the cash flows from, or the revenue flows, some of the revenue flows, it's difficult to trace, especially the non-tax revenue. Unrealistic and unreliable cash plans from spending agencies. And it's mainly because the two entities are not trusting one another. They don't trust that Ministry of Finance will give them the cash. So you always find that these cash plans are not accurate. And there's a lack of cash buffers during crisis, and to ensure timely and efficient cash to fulfill government payment obligations. So what does this lead to if you don't have cash, enough cash to fulfill your obligations? It means that you build up arrears. Money, although it's budgeted, doesn't mean you can spend it. You first need to wait for the money, for the cash to be available before you can spend, and therefore at the end of the year accumulates, and then government needs to issue promissory notes of IOUs that they will pay you later, which accumulate, which is also then add to your debt. Bank of Namibia, Namibia quickly, they do all the payments for government. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So I want to talk to you about the South African experience. So first of all, the South African experience, we started very small. The things were very uncertain, very, nobody knows how much cash we have, so it was quite a mess when we start. But we said, okay, when we start doing the reform of cash management, we said we want to ensure that government manages its cash effectively so that it's efficient to meet, so that there's always cash to meet government's obligations. So that was the first priority. And also to neutralize the government's cash flows on the domestic banking system, and monetary policies not to be undermined, and that we should have returns on our surplus cash. You can't have cash it's lying dormant in your accounts. So in 1995, we started this. So the central bank were doing cash management. We call it the Reserve Bank. So very limited cash flow forecasting. No interest earned on our surplus cash. And sometimes those surplus cash can go up to 100 billion. We're not receiving any interest in those years. Most borrowings were done in the beginning of the year. So in those days, the central bank were responsible for our front office, and they will always say, oh no, interest rates going up, we must borrow now. Sit with all these surplus cash earning no interest. So, and we also said that government cash flow should not impact money market liquidity. That is the challenges, or that we, at that stage, it was the opposite. it did impact our government's cash flows, did impact the money market liquidity, and the cost was added for government. So there was a whole range of reforms that we put in place way back. So you see, it's a process. They say 10 years in the life of a debt manager is very short, but you need to climb this mountain. We need to get up Kilimanjaro. And how do you get up Kilimanjaro? Step by step. So we established a cash management function in 1995, integrate with debt management in 1998, coordinate government-wide cash 2000, and so on and so on. Coordination with monetary policy. So you could see it takes time, but we could reap the fruits afterwards. So the principles that we adopted was we separate monetary and fiscal policies. So when they do money market mopping up, central banks should use their own instruments. Government cash flows should not impact the money market and integrated debt and cash. So we took over the cash management function from the central bank, and we start reforming, developing our cash management system. The first thing that we did, because at the central bank we have the exchequer account, it's the government's account, main account. And there was surplus cash in that account. Sometimes you borrow money coming in through taxes, not spent. So we said, what are we going to do with our surplus cash? Because the central bank didn't pay us any interest on that account. So we opened what we refer to as, let me go to the next slide. We opened 4 commercial bank accounts for government at the banks. Absa Bank, Nedbank, First National Bank, and Standard Bank. 4 accounts, commercial accounts for government. So, and we also created a corporation of public deposit account in the central bank. So all the money that lying dormant at the provinces, in department, we said to them, you could invest it at the corporation of public deposits at the central bank, and we pay you interest for that. So the money was pooled, the money not spent, the idle cash in the system was pooled in an account. Governments, so all the taxes that we collected went straight to what we refer our tax and loan accounts at the banks. So our money were lying at the banks. We negotiated with the banks that they pay us interest, and we can renegotiate the terms. And obviously, in our middle office, the credit risk team, they monitor these banks to see that there's if there's too much money in a certain bank, they must move it to another bank so that that the government doesn't carry too much risk in that regard. So there's always the soundness with the central bank, the soundness of the banking system, the fact that they can look well after our money in the account was monitored on a day-to-day basis by our credit risk team in our middle office. So let's take you through. So this is our institutional arrangement. So you could see the debt office is called the Asset and Liability Management Division. So on the one side, you have the debt management units, your financial operations, which is cash management is part of, accounting and our systems. We develop our own integrated back office system, which works very well. It's straight-through processing all the way. We make all the payments, just press a button, swift payments through the banking system. And the others is our strategy and risk management division, and then the entities that look after the state-owned entities. So that is our structure. If I go to this slide, this is our TSL account, TSA account. It looks complicated, but it's not really complicated. So what we have here at the left-hand side is our Paymaster General Account. So all the departments, all the MDAs have an account in the Paymaster General Account. This is our checker account, the main account of government. Then we open also a dollar account at the central bank, and you see the Corporation of Public Deposit. So it means that non-tax revenue, money from the tax and loan account, they are flowing backwards and forwards between the account, and I will explain you. So this is the structure. So everything is in the central bank in terms of government's accounts. So what happens when there's payments? So it means every night, all the payments from the, so whenever governments make payments, the money will flow from the Paymaster General accounts to the banking system. And in the morning, we clear the balances. We know that, for example, during the night, we had 10,000 or say 100 million rand or dollars that flow out of the account. The next day, we will draw the money from the tax and loan and clear those positions in the account, in the Paymaster General account. So there's neutral flows between government and the banks every day. So there's no excess liquidity in the market. It flows simultaneously. In terms of our foreign loans, I told you that we created a dollar account. So when we borrow in the international market, the money, the dollars comes in and we deposit it into this account and it stays there. We don't convert it into rand, it stays there. And whenever there's interest, foreign interest or redemptions need to pay, or the embassies we need to pay, we pay it from that dollar account. So there's no exchange rate losses when you do it like this. Also save us a lot of cost. And obviously to manage that you need a lot of committees to coordinate activities. So you have the bilateral between the minister and the government, you have the standard committees, and you have the working committees, the debt management committee, that we work very closely with the SAP or the central bank on a day-to-day basis through all these committees. Even we phone them regularly. So the coordination is very important. Just to show you, if I come back to cash flow forecasting, so this is the spreadsheet that we developed. So you find there's a three-year monthly forecasting, current rolling year forecasting, 1 year, and a 90-day rolling forecasting that we keep. Simple Excel spreadsheet gives you that number. And there's a way to fine-tune these things. And I hope we can have one day a workshop on how to do cash flow forecasting. It's a very interesting exercise. We have done it with many countries in Africa already. So here you can see there always coordination between cash, debt, even state-owned entities. The bond results, market overview, treasury bill auctions. Every time there's we meet on a regular basis to discuss these things. How much cash do we have? Where is going to be the shortage? What can we do to fulfill that shortage in terms of cash requirements? So the debt managers agree and the cash manager agree that doesn't matter what the market is doing. We need cash. We need to borrow. So liquidity is priority number one. We always need cash. So the debt managers provide every month the interest rate schedule and the redemption schedule to the cash manager. And then, very important, the cash manager tells the debt manager when we need the money, of how much we need every month in terms of borrowing. So we have a regular weekly auction in the domestic market, and then we plot, when we go to the foreign market or we do a World Bank loan, we said the cash manager will tell the debt manager, listen, I'm going to experience cash flow problems in August this year or in October here. Please make sure that you bring in the money in that period. So there's coordination to ensure that there's a huge redemption. Please, if you can do your borrowing or your activities for that month. So coordination. But there's always, on a monthly basis, in the domestic market, we know that there's cash coming from borrowing as well. But in terms of the huge payments, the dollar commitment or the dollar loans or bonds or whatever, cash and debt coordinate with each other to make sure that we get those funds where we need it the most. So the key principles and the key message here is take small steps and to continue process. Communication and coordination. Sometimes you find that there's a lot of personalities because cash management brings a lot of changes in the workflow of the Ministry of Finance. So sometimes you find, I mean, we experience it in, I'm sure the country won't mind we mentioning, in Uganda, where the Accountant General had certain functions of the cash management unit, and they established a cash management unit, and the Accountant General didn't want to sort of let some of the functions go to the, and it was huge arguments. Until they went up till the minister, and they couldn't resolve it. Even today, it's unresolved. So personalities can be a problem. But it's very important that, so cash management is a simple process. And cash pressure should be identified well in advance. In conclusion, senior management and policymakers to understand and support you. There should be buy-in. Again, cash is king. I want to shout it out. Budget is just an estimate number. Still, it needs to be funded. Accurate data and information sharing is crucial. We understand that countries are at different levels of, and context matters. So you don't have to do, remember what I showed you here is developments over many years. Start small. Change management. And if you do, once you do cash, and you know cash is important and you do well, it brings many efficiencies to the system. No more arrears. No more debt accumulating from monetary policy interventions. No more idle cash in the system. You can make payments when it's due. And that brings a lot of credibility to a system, to your operations, and to also know that you now only have to borrow when you actually need the cash. I hope that was sufficient and clear. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johan, for that wonderful expose on how cash is king. I think the way we need to go, we take the two presentations and then questions can then come later. So if we agree on that, I'm calling on Ajia Binta to please come up for your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking at you. If you don't answer, when I have my question, I point at you. But I think everybody has answered. My task is to take us through how to manage debt service and arrears. The outline is as shown on the screen. We have introduction, objective and expected learning outcomes, best practice in managing debt service, a case study of Nigeria, managing arrears, and conclusion. What is the objective of this presentation is for participants to be able to proactively take charge of debt service process and avoid management of, avoid accumulation of arrears. For us to also understand that debt service defaults and ignoring arrears can lead to severe consequences. We'll look at them as we go along. On the screen is my favorite, I'll call it picture about debt, loan. What we have here is loan obtained from different creditors. Although we are looking at the sign of pound sterling there, in the bag, there are loans denominated in USD, Japanese yen, euro, Swiss franc, and even Ghana cedi. We've taken this loan from the creditors. We have to manage it well. We have to service, avoid accumulation of arrears, so that at the end of the day, from the creditor's end, everything is paid off. What is debt service? I think we all know what debt service is. It has to do with the payment of principal, interest, and other charges on outstanding debt. The interest payment is the cost of borrowing. You have to pay that one. And for principal repayment, any item of economic value, it could be cash, it could be gold, it could be crude oil, or diamond, that a creditor is ready to accept from you based on your agreement to reduce the principal outstanding is principal repayment. For other fees, we are talking of commitment fees, management fees, and administrative fees. Inability to service debt attracts grave consequences. Some of them we were taught yesterday during the legal processes and procedures. So in order to avoid these grave consequences, we need to ensure that there's prompt and accurate debt service payment, and that debt service should be a part of the appropriation in the national budget, meaning that you have to include your debt service as part of the items that will be appropriated by your legislative arm. The creditworthiness of a borrower hinges on your ability to be able to service your debt accurately and timely. Any borrower that cannot service debt is no more credit worthy, even at individual level, we know that. Now we're going to look at best practice in managing debt service, a case study of Nigeria. At this point, I want you to give me time to share the experience we had in Nigeria with you. As at end December 2004, Nigeria's total debts, external debt stood at 35 billion USD. Of the 35 billion USD, 30 billion USD was owed to the Paris Club creditors. As at that time, our debt was unsustainable. We're in similar position that many of you here, your countries here, are in now, as at that time. The debt was unsustainable. We were in debt distress, debt overhang. The load was too heavy for our government to carry. But prior to that, that is prior to 2004, we had gone to the Paris Club 4 times to reschedule our debt. We have Agreement 1, Agreement 2, Agreement 3, and Agreement 4 from the Paris Club, containing all those draconian clauses that were discussed yesterday. The clauses were not friendly at all. That's why we use the word draconian, and 4 of them. It now became apparent to our government and authorities that we cannot go back to go and do rescheduling. What we needed was debt relief. So the then president of Nigeria, General Olusegun Obasanjo, and the then Minister of Finance, who is the current DG, World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, championed the campaign for debt relief for Nigeria. So they went through complex processes and procedure, and by September 2005, Nigeria obtained debt relief from the Paris Club creditors. What it meant was that we had 18 billion out of the 30 billion paid off, and we had to pay 12 billion US dollars. After the payment of 12 billion US dollars, we exited the Paris Club credit of creditor. We had no Paris Club again. So that was how we left. We had that bitter experience, and we exited the Paris Club. After the exit, the populace of Nigeria and the government of Nigeria said, never again will we go through that part. So a lot of reforms were put in place to ensure that we don't go back to debt unsustainability. So the debt service procedure I'm going to share with you is an abbreviated version of the real processes that we have, which is a bit lengthy, but the message will be well communicated. So this debt service process and procedure was one of the measures put in place to ensure that we don't go back to debt unsustainability. And like my colleague here has said, you need cash. So cash management committee was set up. It's one of the things that were done, but our interest here is on debt service. So the different stakeholders involved in debt service processes were identified. And these are the stakeholders. They were identified, and the role of each of the stakeholders was spelled out in the document that is referred to as debt service process and procedure. We had the creditor, the DMO, Federal Minister of Finance, and the rest of them. And at the end, we have the subnationals. Subnationals means jurisdiction is called councils, and we call them states in Nigeria. On the screen is it shows us the budgetary position for debt service, how it is made, how we make sure that debt service is put as part of the process. The DMO estimates debt service. Like my colleague said, that's done on monthly. We estimated debt service for the next year and forward it to Budget Office of the Federation through the Minister of Finance. And this is passed to the National Assembly for appropriation in the national budget. Once that is done, it means that DMO has the authority to service the debt. We go to National Assembly to go and to seek authority to borrow, and we have to go there again to go and seek authority to be able to service our debt. So once that is gone, the DMO seeks approval of the Minister of Finance to service the debt as appropriated. I mentioned subnational. It is because debt sustainability, if you have councils and subnationals, local government as the case may be, debt sustainability cannot be just at the central government if the other regions don't have debt sustainability. So, in fact, the DMO in Nigeria, we went out to build competencies at the state level to ensure that they have the skills to be able to manage their debt, to be able to project so that we attain overall debt sustainability. The DMO Act itself gives the DMO the power to service the external debt of the subnational. This is because part of the 30 billion Paris Club I mentioned, part of it were debts owned by the subnational, but due to implicit debt contingent guarantees, it became that of government debt. So, and what happens is that the subnational have to sign a subsidiary loan agreement with us to give us the power that we should deduct the money for their service from their own, from their allocation. And before I go forward, I want to inform us that in Nigeria, every month, the 3 tiers of government, that is the central government, subnational, and the local government, they meet monthly in a meeting that is named Federation Allocation Accounts Committee, FAC. We meet there, they meet there so that you can share whatever accrues to the federation. So before the money is shared, I mentioned yesterday the issue of first line. I think I'll come there. Before the money is shared to these 3 tiers of government, debt service is number 1. It takes priority. It's deducted. So once it's deducted, whatever you have is what you carry home to go and carry out your other activities. What are the control measures put in place to strengthen effective and prompt debt service? You see, here we have the minister giving biannual approval to the CBN and OAGF to service debt. The OAGF, the cash management, they are the one controlling the cash of the government, even though the CBN is the paying agent of government, is the banker of government. So on a biannual basis, that is 6 months to when a debt is due, they are already been informed that this debt is going to be paid in the next 6 months. So that schedule that is after obtaining the approval, we forward the schedule to take it to FAC for deduction, because the schedule has to be given to the people at the FAC so that they can effect deduction. And whatever is deducted at FAC, which I've already told you, is warehoused in what we call external creditor funding account. So a different account, a dollar account, just similar to what South Africa is doing, is opened with the Central Bank of Nigeria. That is where any money that is deducted for debt service, that's where it is warehoused. So that on a monthly basis, as the debts are due, the debts are paid from this account. This is a new innovation. This is one of the things that was put in place to ensure that we don't default in debt. Then the actual debt service commences on the receipt of demand notice. You know, I mentioned creditor as one of the stakeholders. When we get demand notice from creditor, it means we now have to start processing. The DMO processes and send it to Office of the Accountant General to issue mandate. The Office of Accountant General will issue mandate to the Central Bank of Nigeria to effect payment, and the CBN still comes back to the Central Bank of Nigeria to confirm the authenticity of the signatories through other means. Then the CBN externalizes the payment to the creditor, and after this is done, the DMO, the CBN, and the OAGF hold a monthly reconciliation. This is in a nutshell the procedure that was put in place. It was not there before. It means that for the DMO, for the debt officers, you don't just sit on your desk. If you don't, at a time that you expect that the demand notice will come from the creditors, these days things are better, it comes through mail, but when we are around 2008, 2009, up to 2010, most of the demand notices, they come through mail. So if you don't receive your demand notice and the date is coming nearer, then you have to alert your creditor because you need the demand notice to be able to process payment. Even though approval has been given to servicing of the debt, but the CBN, OAGF will not pay unless there is a demand notice from the creditor. So that is one of the processes. Then at the end of payment of every month, there is a reconciliation between these three agencies so that DMO will be ensured that what the mandate issued by the Office of the Accountant General tallies with the request forwarded to the Accountant General through the Minister of Finance. Then CBN, OAGF will be ensured that what the Central Bank of Nigeria paid is actually what was the mandate to amount to what was raised on the mandate. This monthly reconciliation is very important because it shows transparency. It also closes the door for any default. Nobody can collude. You cannot collude. The DMO cannot go and collude with OAGF. OAGF collude with CBN to make payments because there are different officers that are involved in the process. So the domestic debt service procedure was also put in place. It follows the same process. The only difference that for domestic debt service, we don't wait for demand notice from the investors because the Central Bank of Nigeria has the depository of all the bondholders. So when the amount is due, the system automatically pays them. But after that, again, there is a monthly reconciliation. So what I just described is what is shown in the diagram. We have the DMO, OAGF, and CBN reconciling actual debt service. And there is regular reconciliation of debt service between us and the states. One of the problems we face in putting this procedure in place is that after you have made payments and amounts are deducted from the allocation of the state, that is the subnationals, they go back home and write us to say that what we have done is wrong, especially when they see that what they've gone home with is small. So we have to hold monthly reconciliation with them, show them the figures. This is your debt. This is what you are owing according to the records that is with you. And this is what you are owing, and we have deducted according to your record. So that reconciliation is very important so that there won't be issues. Because if the states do not agree with us, they can take us to the press, and there will be serious problems with the negative press for the federal government. And actually, one of the other issues is that there is feedback on actual debt service versus amount budgeted. We do a feedback to the Minister of Finance monthly to say $20 million was budgeted for debt service. We have paid 19 out of the 20 million. Or 20 billion was budgeted, we paid 21. What happened that you paid 21? You have to explain. Then, at the end of each budgetary process, one of the processes that some of us at the DMO we don't like is that we have to appear before the National Assembly to now defend our budget, our debt service budget. We have to show them they have the record of what was budgeted and what was paid. On a loan-by-loan basis, creditor-by-creditor basis, you have to show the National Assembly. So this is part of the processes that was put in place to ensure that things don't go back. I mentioned reconciliation, and this is a template, a sample template for reconciliation of external debt service. Those of us that already have other means of ensuring that we don't have arrears or don't run into default, no problem. But please, if you don't have it, it's a good thing for you to emulate, because it hastens the process of reconciliation. We have our opening stock. It's not really the issue in contention. What is in contention is principal payment, interest paid, and other charges. And this reconciliation template must be signed off by, you see, here we have the DMO, representative of Accountant General, and representative of the Central Bank of Nigeria have to sign off this reconciliation template to ensure that what was appropriated is what is paid, and if there are differences, there must be reason for differences. And immediately that what comes to mind, what causes differences between what is appropriated and what is paid in terms of debt service is exchange rate fluctuations. You know, the exchange rate is not this. So what are the benefits of these control measures that we have put in place? Number one is that there's efficient and prompt debt service payment. There is accurate debt service payment, and there is debt service payment is effective. The control measure guides against fraud, no fraud, and there is homogeneity in terms of data that is released by the DMO, Federal Ministry of Finance, and the Central Bank. And again, it is to mitigate against defaults. So, and the conciliation of debt service, I've already said, is for accountability and transparency. It shows that what we are doing is transparent. Debt service should not be done under the cover of nobody knows what we are servicing. If you hide what you are servicing and you don't allow people to know what you are servicing, eventually arrears will come out because it may not be very accurate. So what we are doing now is it helps us to ensure that if there is anything that is left undone, it will come up. Managing arrears, that's the other side of the topic. What is an arrear? Arrears refers to payments that are due and they are not paid. They are overdue for payment. And arrears is the cause of accumulation of debt that leads to debt distress, debt overhang. So when you miss principal repayment, interest, or other charges, you are already incurring arrears. And when you incur arrears, it means you are in financial stress, there is potential mismanagement, and or the systemic disruption can cause it. So in the context of debt management, being in arrears signals ineffective debt management, and it signals that you cannot honor a simple obligation. So one of the things that we fear most in debt management is not to be in arrears, because it doesn't connote say good thing about us. What causes debt arrears? What are the causes of arrears? Number one, we know that if you don't pay, you are in arrears. What causes it? We found that if there is delay in budgetary releases, if budget is not released on time, because that's where the cash management comes in. You need the money to pay. If the money is not available, then you cannot pay. But for us, as I told you, we are putting measures in place to ensure that this doesn't happen. Error in payment schedule. The payment schedule is drawn by officers. All that Dr. Johan was saying is people that work on it. The Excel is people generated. If you are generating Excel, you are working with Excel, instead of writing 10 and you write 1, so it means there is error. So what is going to come out will show as a failure. There are so many other causes which have written there. One of them that is very important is unskilled debt officers. Unskilled debt officers. We have debt officers that don't understand loan agreement, how to interpret loan agreement, terms and conditions. Thank God we are here and we are learning to improve our knowledge. So if you have officers that are not well skilled and they are the one in charge of managing debt, so instead of amortizing for 10 years principal repayment, they amortize for 20 because they don't understand the debt, the schedule. It means that right from the word go, no matter how much you pay, arrears will be coming out. Either you have positive arrears or what I call negative arrears. So we don't want to see arrears. If you overpay, you have negative arrears. If you underpay, you have positive arrears. Of concern again is issue of corruption. I don't know somehow it's no more applicable to us in Nigeria, but then we've heard stories of desk officers colluding with creditor to pay money that is meant for debt service into a different account offshore. I don't know whether any of us has such experience. And one of the other reasons is lack of communication. When there is no communication between the creditor and the borrower, it means that you don't know what is due, or whatever you have scheduled, no reconciliation to show that the payments has been received. What are the types of debt areas that we have come across in managing debt? There's what we call real areas, and that's what we call false areas. Real areas are those areas that are due to non-payment of principal, interest, and other fees. Then the false areas are areas that pop up. You have paid, but it's showing in your system that you have not paid. And if you are working in a system, and you know that there's going to be reconciliation with your creditors, or even reconciliation with beneficiary, or even credit rating agencies are coming to your office to come and audit, to look at your operation, to print this report for me, and the report is going to show false arrears. Then it means that when you sit down and you see arrears that are not real, you have to start looking of a way of addressing those arrears. What causes false arrears? Data entry errors. I've made example. System glitches. If your computer is not working, some of us try to put on our computer for how many hours it did not come up, and maybe you have system issues. So if you have system issue, you must have posted a payment, but the system is not recognizing it. I think I also mentioned foreign exchange conversion can also cause false arrears. Then if you have miscommunication, inaccurate reporting, delays or errors in processing payment can cause arrear. Again, there is fraudulent activity. I've mentioned that before. If government has made provision for payment to be made, payment has been made by your central bank, but the payment went into a different account and not the account of the creditor where it's supposed to be. You have no actual to report. What you have arrears that will pop up because creditor says they've not gotten the money. Okay. What are the strategies for managing debt arrears? Again, those of us that are debt managers here and working in debt office, you have to know how to manage your arrears, especially the first one. The real arrears, those arrears are real. What is the strategy for managing it is to ensure that payment is made as at when due. All the processes that are put in place, you follow through to ensure payment is due. But what of false arrears that appear in your system when you have paid? How do you manage it? Use of robust debt management software such as Commonwealth Meridian or DINFAS is a way to manage arrears. Because this system they are self-validating. If you put in the wrong figure that doesn't agree with an earlier figure, it will pop up to tell you that you have made an error and you can correct it. And again, some of them have alert system that can alert you that payment is due, so and so. So it will help you to be able to manage. Then maintaining accurate record is a way of managing arrears. You have to make debt service payment a priority. I think I mentioned that in Nigeria, we made it first line charge, meaning that when gather at Federation Accounts Allocation Committee to share whatever accrued to the purse of the Federation, debt service is deducted as first line. Once it's deducted, whatever is left is what is shared among the rest shares of government. This is to ensure that no matter what happens, what we are owing, you pay it. So that's this thing. Then you have to also understand the arrears management policy of your creditors. That's another way to manage arrears. Yesterday, I think we were told during the legal, when we were talking about the clauses and the rest of them, that in some cases, some creditors, they give you, there's grace periods for late payment. You have to understand, is it 5 days, is it 10 days, or whatever the case may be, so that If you don't have your payment has not been effected within 5 days, you know that you have not gone into arrears because you are still within the grace period allowed by the creditor. And there should be proactive communication with the lender. If demand notices are not sent, I think I said it. I don't know what is the procedure in all your countries, but if you have time, maybe during the question and answer, we can talk about it. Do you still wait for demand notice? Are they sent? How are they sent to you? Because of time, I don't want to wait, but I'll quickly call on somebody from Liberia to share with us how do you pay your creditors. Do you get demand notices? Yes, please.
So usually at the end of the month, because we want to prepare the payment request a month to the due date. So then we request from the creditor to send us the billing notice. But for the World Bank, we have the client connection, where we ourselves go to the client connection and put out the billing notices. So we don't have the request from the World Bank. So for the AFDB, they are very regular. They will send us the bill 1 month to the payment date. Yeah. So which puts us in a better position to have the payment paid on time. But the issue we really experience is actually with the bilateral creditors. They, most of the times, won't share their creditor notices. And when you request the information from them, they won't even share the information with you. But when you delay in the payments, then they come back with a lot of communication and requesting why, So those are issues we have faced. But over the past 1 year, I think since 2024, we have actually been on time with our debt services, except for where some of those contracts that have been signed, we did not get the information to have it put into our system. For example, the African Exim Bank, we had an issue last year. The minister, when they signed the agreement, we did not get it until the payment fell due. It was when we got to know that this agreement has been signed months ago. So for debt servicing, I think we have been on course in the case of Liberia.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's good. I think it's a good experience shared because one of the problems is with bilateral creditors. Even for us in Nigeria, when I was in the office, I experienced that they don't send demand notices on time. Even though you know amount that is due, you cannot go ahead and pay. You have to pay. You have to use demand notice as the part of the document that you need to pay. And when there is delay, they come to you to say there is delay. What we did is that you make sure that all the communication are well documented. So if there is delay, in fact, we write them that note that if it doesn't get to us and so date, note that we are not responsible for any delay that may occur thereof. That's the language. So when it comes to you late and the payment goes to them late, they cannot go back to you. But we thank God that it is good that it has been. This place, Gambia, quickly. Okay, there is somebody. The Gambia, are you ready for me, please? Yes, very fast.
Oui, un cas d'exemple. Au Tchad, il y avait des entités qui existaient, qui pilotaient le projet de sécurité alimentaire et d'autres. Après un certain temps d'exercice, ces entités ont disparu. Il y avait des administrateurs qui étaient chargés de faire leur compte passif, avaient travaillé normalement. Je reprends, je disais, c'est une expérience aussi que je partage avec vous au Tchad. Et il y avait des entités sous tutelle de différents ministères qui existaient, et qui pilotaient des différents projets aussi de l'agriculture et autres. Et il fut un temps, il y avait un problème de financement, ces entités ont disparu. Et or, il y avait des marchés qui ont été confiés à des particuliers, et ces gens ont réalisé des marchés. Après leur disparition, il y avait un administrateur liquidateur qui devait faire la cessation de tous ces passifs parce qu'ils réclamaient leur paiement. Et après, maintenant, la cessation qui a été faite par le liquidateur, Il y a aussi l'inspection générale de finances qui avait siégé dessus pour transmettre à la direction de la dette par rapport au paiement. Bon, pendant la situation qui a été faite par les liquidateurs, ici avéré qu'il y avait des procès-verbaux qui ont été signés par le gouverneur et autres qui ne tenaient pas compte des situations réelles parce qu'il y a des entreprises qui ont dit qu'elles ont réalisé des travaux, mais sur le lieu, il n'y a aucune réalisation qui a été faite. Mais maintenant, la situation est transmise déjà à la direction de la dette pour les paiements. Et là, je me demande, est-ce que cela peut encore dépendre de la responsabilité de la dette, ou bien est-ce que ça, on peut qualifier ça comme des faux arriérés, ou bien ça, ce sont des vrais arriérés, étant donné que sur le terrain, aucune réalisation n'a été faite. Comment on peut gérer ça de manière transparente? Merci.
Because of time, no, this is not question time. I wanted him to share, I want us to share experience. What he has said is more of a question to me than sharing experience, but the experience led to question. The debt office were given demand notice to pay, whereas there is no document to show that the work has been done. Is it correct?
Non, le document existe. Ce sont des faux documents qui ont été faits en collaboration avec certaines autorités administratives qui se trouvaient sur le lieu. Mais exactement, si vous descendez et vous n'allez rien, peut-être la personne, le créancier pourra vous dire qu'il a construit des châteaux, mais en réalité, vous ne retrouvez pas le château. Mais il y a un procès verbal qui est dûment signé et on transmet ça à la direction de la dette pour la paye. Mais je me demande, est-ce que selon vous, est-ce qu'on peut qualifier ça comme des faux arriérés ou bien des vrais arriérés?
Thank you very much. I got your question very well, but let me quickly address it. No work was done, and nothing was done. There was some fraud. You know, I mentioned fraudulent activity as part of the things that cause false arrears. It's false. There's no work at all that was done, and now we are asked to pay. In fact, it's a fraudulent activity, and you are not going to pay. It takes. Okay, you are not hearing me. Okay, please, let's leave it till question time. I'll note it. I'll address it then. I think there's no time to share with the Gambia now. Time is gone. Pardon? Okay. Give it to them.
Good morning, Madam, for a very important and interesting presentation. I think debt service is in the core. When you hear DMO, debt service is in the core of things. Because that is the only thing that once area is established, you know, the pressure comes not sometimes from the minister's office downward, and sometimes beyond that, it can even come from the president's office downward. But just not to waste too much of your time, since we're completely out of time, our case is very much similar to what my sister from Liberia has actually intervened on. So particularly the same. But one issue or one challenge that actually it poses, especially in the recent times, is because of the liberal exchange regime that we have. So sometimes, because of those delays, when you get into the processing sometimes, because of the turnaround, it does cause some challenges. So you do the debt service payment, and all of a sudden, you know, they come back and again to tell you that there's a shortfall, because by the time it externalizes, you know, the exchange rate has already changed. Yes. So these are some of the challenges that we face as a result of the slow turnaround time. Yeah. But the challenges are the same with that of Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What you've just described falls under what I call false arrears. You have paid, but due to exchange rate fluctuation, what you've paid, it becomes short and it doesn't match with what we're supposed to pay. And normally, in most cases, when this thing happens and we communicate to the creditors, what will happen is that amount that fell short will be added to the next debt service due, so that you pay it next payment dates. But there are false arrears. If you have false arrears in your system, it's when you don't know the reason for the arrears that becomes a worry for you. If you know why the arrears are there, false arrears, like the case of Liberia, whoever is coming to inspect your book, you can just explain that so and so happened, and that's why this area has arisen. Thank you very much. Okay, what are the strategies for managing arrears? We have said the causes. The strategy, number one, there has to be transparency in data. We are talking about transparency. That one is not even, the source of the debt is not transparent already. So it will be difficult for you to handle. And we have to ensure that there is communication between us and the creditor. Set up alert in your system. Again, explore the option of restructuring. Be realistic. When the debt level is high, you have accumulated a lot of arrears, and you are already in distress. There's no need to say you can manage the arrears anymore. You can't manage anymore. What you can only do is to go for restructuring. And the process of restructuring, that is one of the processes of structuring, we have arrears clearance. Even though it's not a topic for this discussion, it's an IMF tool that is designed for clearing of arrears during restructuring process. So consequences of unmanaged debt arrears, we can read them all, but it has negative impact on your credit score, that is credit rating. It increases your interest and other fees. It balloons your debt stock, as we see, as was explained in the case of Nigeria. It impacts on debt services. It can cause loss of asset. We were told yesterday, if you don't service your debt and you accumulated arrear, your assets can be seized if the loans are secured loans. And again, it could result to legal action by your creditors. So I think this measure, I've already mentioned it. One of the ones I haven't mentioned is that you should avoid accumulating more debt. You are already in debt, you are already in distress, you have arrears, you are not paying. So try not to go and accumulate more debt. Try to slow down on your debt so that you'll be able to pay. Then improve cash flow management. I think the cash management is a very vital part of debt service operation. So this activity is carried out between the DMO and the Office of the Accountant General in our own jurisdiction. Then upscale the skills of debt management personnel. We can never finish talking about it. Upscale, make sure that the debt management personnel are very good. They understand what they are doing. There should be regular data validation and reconciliation, and there should be improvement of communication between the creditors. Some of this we can read up later. What are the constraints in our own jurisdiction? The constraint, as one of the constraints, Liberia has said it, that the bilateral creditors, they don't send them demand notice on time. That's a constraint. A similar one, another one from the Gambia, the constraint is that we have exchange rate variation, time of payment and time of externalization, they are not the same. And my brother, I can't see your country. Your own challenge is that debts that are not there, they call it obvious debt. Somebody brings a debt document that is not even existent due to fraud that you should come and pay. They are part of the challenges. But our own main challenge is that there is no handshake between the system that is used in the DMO Nigeria and that is used by the Office of Accountant General. The system is not available to them. Even when you make it available to them, they are not using it. And because of that, there is a lot of legwork. The officers in DMO have to be going to the Office of the Accountant General and also the Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure their service is paid. One thing that I want us to know, even though my colleague has mentioned how it is done in their own jurisdiction, debt service payment, like the Gambian director from the Gambian said, is the primary responsibility of a debt manager, of a debt office. But it's not the primary responsibility of Central Bank. It's not the primary responsibility of the Accountant General of the Federation. So it is you whose debt service payment is your primary responsibility that should be following them to ensure that their service is made. You cannot just send the payment to them and go and lie down that they will pay. It's not their own primary responsibility. They have other things that they are doing, but it's yours as a debt manager to ensure that payment is made. And again, there's no linkage. GIFMIS, some of you here, you have GIFMIS, but we don't have there's no GIFMIS integration with GIFMIS and debt management office has not occurred in Nigeria. So in conclusion, I think more or less we've said everything. So you ensure that there is effective debt service payment. You manage your arrears very well. You should implement a robust technology, and training of staff is very key. If you do all this I've said, I'm finishing. If you do all this I've said, it means that you are managing your debt very well. And the bottom line of effective debt management is to honor debt obligations. You have collected from here, it should be like this at the end of the day. You have paid everything, nothing is left. If that is done, the creditor and the borrower, there will be a handshake because you honor your obligation. But if you don't honor your obligation, instead of handshake, what you receive is this, or dragging your clothes to the court.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And now is the question and answer time. We manage our time because we still need to have to conserve some time for our exercises. So if you have any question for either of them, you raise up your hand and let's have it. Yep. Please take the microphone too.
Mrs. Hanato and the other presenter for that insightful presentation. My question goes to Mrs. Suleiman. You've indicated during the presentation that you have this first line charge. During FAC, there will be this allocation for debt service that will be taken out and put into an account at CBN. It's like the debt service account at CBN is like pre-funded prior to the actual debt service. So which I believe is in local currency. So how do you manage the exchange rate movement? You know, because you've pre-funded for some period before the debt service. You mentioned 6 months or every month, things like that. So would there be a case for shortfalls, you know, as the exchange rate moves? The second question is on the domestic debt service. So if that's also, of course, central bank will be in the know, but in terms of appropriation, is it the interest, you know, cost on the domestic debt that is appropriated, or you appropriate in the budget both the interest part and then the principal? Thank you.
Sorry, please, let me get the last question on domestic debt. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. On the domestic debt part, I was asking which part of the debt service is appropriated in the budget. Is it only the interest, or both the interest and the principal is appropriated in the budget? So this will give me an opportunity in terms of demand notice. So supposing, you know, for example, that demand notice, is it part of the loan agreement that before you service, you must get the demand notice? Or if you got the terms, can you service, you know, even if you don't get the demand notice? Or is it part of the loan agreement that demand notice must come before you can service? Thank you.
Bonjour à tous. Et je voudrais également dire merci aux deux présentateurs qui nous ont partagé l'expérience de l'Afrique du Sud et du Nigeria. Je voudrais faire un commentaire par rapport à la présentation de M. Johan et ensuite aller vers ma question. Je pense que la présentation qu'il a faite, je ne sais pas si c'est dans un contexte où effectivement ils sont en situation d'excédent de trésorerie. Parce que quand il dit qu'ils ont eu à couvrir des comptes au niveau des banques pour pouvoir placer cet excédent qui devrait rapporter des intérêts au gouvernement, est-ce que ça veut dire qu'ils n'ont pas pu faire cela au niveau de la Banque centrale? Parce qu'à mon sens d'usage, on dit que la Banque centrale, c'est le banquier de l'État. Et donc, quand il y a des paiements à faire, ça se fait au niveau de la Banque centrale. Donc, je n'ai pas compris pourquoi les comptes ont été ouverts au niveau des banques pour, en quelque sorte, faire des placements qui devraient rapporter. Cela n'aurait pas pu être négocié au niveau de la Banque centrale. Je ne sais pas. Donc, je voudrais quand même des éclaircissements par rapport à ça. Parce que le contexte de la plupart de nos pays, je pense, c'est que nous sommes dans une situation où on a plutôt besoin de trésorerie. Et donc, nos gouvernements interviennent sur le marché intérieur pour pouvoir lever des fonds et faire face aux différentes dépenses, notamment d'investissement. Okay? Donc, et ensuite, je pense que le concept de compte unique du Trésor que lui-même il a relevé, et je me demande si ce concept-là va avec la possibilité d'ouvrir des comptes au niveau des banques commerciales. Je vous remercie.
Bon, en fait, permettez-moi de vous remercier pour votre belle présentation. Dans votre présentation, vous avez parlé d'une prévision pluriannuelle de la trésorerie. Je voulais peut-être que vous nous donniez au moins quelques outils pour permettre plus de sincérité dans cette prévision. L'autre point aussi, lorsque nous faisons nos prévisions à travers le plan de trésorerie, on a un équilibre du plan de trésorerie. Est-ce que cet équilibre devait tenir compte de la portée pluriannuelle ou on devait avoir un équilibre par année? C'est un peu ce que je voulais demander. Merci. Et il y a aussi un autre point par rapport aux demandes de paiement de la dette. Souvent, nous constatons que lorsque les bailleurs nous envoient leurs demandes de paiement, on constate des écarts. Donc, on ne sait pas si c'est lors de la négociation, on n'a pas bien compris les clauses ou comment, puisque nous sommes obligés de payer. Merci.
Moi c'est Étienne Diboron. Merci. Je disais que c'est Étienne Diboron. Bon, excusez. En fait, je disais que c'est Étienne Diborondi. Je tiens aussi à remercier les présentateurs pour ces présentations aussi riches, et aussi pour le partage d'expérience pour le cas de l'Afrique du Sud et du Nigeria. Ma question s'adresse à madame qui a présenté sur la question sur le point à rapport avec les arriérés. Vous avez beaucoup plus développé les arriérés en rapport avec le paiement des services de la dette. mais je n'ai pas trouvé là où vous avez pu développer les arriérés en rapport avec les arriérés budgétaires, parce que ces arriérés aussi ont une implication sur la dette. Je ne sais pas si au niveau du Nigeria, vous n'avez pas des arriérés budgétaires, parce que les arriérés budgétaires aussi, ça va augmenter à un certain moment le niveau de la dette. Vous pouvez nous partager donc l'expérience du Nigeria par rapport à la manière dont les arriérés budgétaires sont traités pour une gestion efficace de la dette publique. Merci.
I think they will have to take this first set of questions, and then we come back. We come back to you so that they don't forget. Let's allow them take the first set of about 4 questions that have been thrown at them. Please, madam, you can come.
Thank you very much. The question from my brother from the Gambia. You talk about first line charge at FAC, and that the account that we put this money, when it's time to service this, don't we suffer exchange rate fluctuation? The account is called External Creditor Funding Account. It's a separate account that is denominated in dollar. When money is deducted at FAC in Naira, it is converted to dollar and put into that account. There is normally exchange rate fluctuation between the time of deducting the money and the time of putting it in that account. The account is maintained with JP Morgan Chase. It's not actually in Nigeria. So it's with JP Morgan Chase. And when there are exchange rate fluctuation between the time the money was deducted at FAC and when it was converted, it could be less, it could be more. But because the account has been set up since around 2005, 2006, when we existed the Paris Club, there is exchange rate gain and there is exchange rate loss. There is always money in that account to service the debt. So it is in US dollars. We don't suffer much variation in exchange rate, except when we want to service what we call third currency loans. Third currency loans are loans that are denominated not in Naira, not in dollar, but other currency apart, because the first and second currency for us in Nigeria is the Naira is our first, that's our local currency. Then the dollar, the currencies which we earn our export, then that is our one. So any loan that is denominated in another currency is called third currency. Like if the loan to be in pound sterling, Japanese yen, Swiss franc, or euro. So such ones, it means that when central bank want to service, they will give instruction to JP Morgan to deduct the dollar equivalent of such loans and service it in the currency of denomination. Normally, there is currency, there is exchange rate fluctuation, but it is absorbed by the fact that this account has been pre-funded for so many years ago. There is always a balance there. There is, we have that is a problem. Then the issue of domestic debt, that what we put in the budget, is it interest and principal? Regrettably, I would say it's only interest, because our domestic debt is very high. We are not paying as at when due, but we have a deep domestic debt market where we go every time it is due to go and refinance. So what we are going to refinance, we don't put it as part of what is going to be paid, but we made that information available, that out of this amount that is in the budget is for interest only, but we are going to refinance so and so. But there were times when we started to redeem some of the bonds. When we started to redeem some of the bonds, we put it in budget as part of principal repayment, but it's very rare. But what we normally put there is the interest payment. I hope that answers your question. Then I think there was this question of what is in the loan agreement. Is it the demand notice? Whether it's in the loan, it is not in the loan agreement. Part of the procedure that was put in place to ensure that we don't go back to, because apart from loan agreement, we came home, that is Nigerian government came home to come and look at the books ourselves. Where can we, what are the things that we are doing wrong that made us to go into debt or sustainability. So one of the things that was put in place is to ensure that, number one, we know that demand notice, you must get demand notice before you pay. Because if you don't say that, what my brother was describing that happened in their country will happen. If there is no demand notice, it means somebody in DMO can just get up and say that this amount is due and it will be processed and it will be paid. As far as government is concerned, government has paid. But as far as the creditor is concerned, nothing has come. So that is why we now put it as part of the process and procedure to ensure that demand notice come from creditor before payment is made. It's not in the loan agreement. Thank you. I think the other one is has to do with when the country that said when you see payment order, I think you spoke in French. Please, you can put on your this so can hear my. When you receive payment orders, they come late, and when they come late, is it because you don't understand the terms or the agreement or what? It has nothing to do with you understanding or not understanding. It's similar to what is happening in Liberia. Payment orders are coming late. It is your responsibility as a debt manager to ensure that you know your payment dates, 30 days or what, to the payment days. At times we do 40 days to payment days. You write to the creditor that we're expecting your demand notice. If payment orders are not coming as at when it is supposed to come, it's your responsibility to follow up and make sure that it's given to you. Because if you don't get it and payment is not made and you did not write them to show that you are push the delay to them. If you don't push the delay to them, the delay will now be yours and they'll say you have gone into arrears. I hope I've answered your question. Okay. I think there's one that comes about arrears. Yeah, arrears in the budget. That we know that we have budgetary arrears. We call it a shortage of budgetary in terms of budgetary implementation. We find out that it's not the amount that is appropriated that is budgeted. It doesn't happen it doesn't concern debt service because debt service had already been appropriated. And I've told you that what we do is that we have a procedure in place that no matter what happens, and anything that comes to FAC for sharing, anything that comes to FAC for sharing, debt service should be removed. So we remove debt service from the budgetary, whatever is going to other states. So debt service is treated differently. There is no arrears as long as you ensure that when money comes for sharing, you make debt service first line charge. That's how it is. Thank you.
Okay. Just on the question of the accounts of government, the central bank, yes, the main account of government is at the central bank. And in the South African case, the central bank, when our balances was still kept at the central bank, the central bank didn't pay us any interest on that, so it was lying dormant. I know in some countries the central bank do pay interest. So it's whatever works best in your country. You can keep the balances in the central bank as long as the money is not lying dormant there, that at least there's value for your cash. And the only reason why we took it away from the central bank is because the central bank didn't pay us any interest. So we opened tax and loan accounts, but the tax and loan accounts is just because of it's not an account that I mean the surpluses varies. So if you have an interest payment, of course you will start way ahead building up cash balances. When you pay the interest, the balances will be low again. So it's a cash flow situation. But the main thing is that whatever your arrangement or the principle here is that when there's balances in your accounts, you should earn interest on that. Either if it's in the central bank or if it's separate in bank accounts that we keep. I mean, the central bank might pay you less interest than the bank. So it's a consideration that you need to decide, or you need to consider which option will work the best for you. But if the central banks pay you interest, keep your money in the central bank. In terms of the incompatibility between the account, I mean, there's always a flow. In terms of the treasury single account, so every country needs to decide what is the format of their treasury account. So there's no one size fits all. With us, our single treasury account sits in the central bank with the exchequer account and the paymaster general accounts for all the departments. And the tax or the accounts in the banks is just to keep. It's like money in the bank. I mean, you keep it separate. You get returns on that, and when it's used, it flows back to the central bank, and payments flow through the paymaster general account. So there's interaction, there's coordination, but it's very important. So the lesson here is that you can't manage 2,000 or 3,000 accounts. So make sure that you develop a single treasury account, a structure account that's manageable, that's reconcilable, that you know what is the amount in each of those accounts. When there's too many accounts of government, it becomes a problem. You don't know where's the money. Is it reconciled? It opens up a whole can of worms in terms of misuse of money. So in terms of the forecast, ideally, when you do forecast and when you only carry balances because there is some huge payments going forward, and you make provision well ahead in terms of making that payment. But ideally, at the end of the year, there should be no balances left. But you know that when you move from one financial year to the other financial year, that you can't start zero immediately, so you need to build up some cash balances over different financial years to make sure that you can start a new year as well. So you can start a new year with money in your bank. But it's in terms of that is just for cash flow purposes. In terms of accounting purpose, it's dealt with separately. So remember, it's not always that the government have cash balances. It's just the way you foresee gaps in terms of payments required, and that you make provision well in time to ensure that you will have money when you need to pay. In terms of the budget arrears, I know that Nigeria doesn't have, but there's many countries that do have budget arrears. And as I said, it adds up because they issue promissory notes or IOUs that I will pay you later. So in terms of interest payment, yes, but ideally, I mean, you can never actually pay your commitments in terms of your loans late. I mean, it's something that should be on your system. There should be early warning signs. You know exactly when you need to make payments. Ideally, your system should, and there should be prior communication in terms of your debt service costs. But in terms of budget arrears, if you don't do active cash management and you do cash rationing, of course, what will happen? Arrears will build up on your budget, and that will be promissory notes or IOUs that you have to pay in the next financial year.